Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Om Parthaya Pradibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshiniim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam-anusantadami Bhagavad-gite Bhavat-veshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyai-stavai Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadai Gayanti Yam Samadaha Dhyanavastita Tadghatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Navidusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Last year, the whole academic year, we saw chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. And that was, highlight of that was Puja Guruji, Swami Tejamayana himself was here to conduct a week-long talk on the same subject. And it was such a great experience listening from a disciple of Swami Chinmayananda, and also one who had over 30-35 years of experience on the subject matter, dealing and talking about it from different standpoints, a lot of examples, anecdotes, personal experience, etc. So most of you who have listened to the talk might have understood that Gita is essentially a very practical guide for all of us. It is not something which merely a philosophical discussion which has no relevance to practical life. It is said, our Gurudev also mentions in his commentary, that scriptures, what we call it as granthas, the scriptures are those which are about what is the highest possible truth, which is the very substratum and source of this universe. Thinkers always wondered about creation. Any intelligent person living in this world will wonder about what is around oneself. And this is unavoidable. And this wonderment alone creates curiosity And curiosity is the birthplace of inventions. Now, when the great thinkers of the past started becoming curious about the creation, not only wonderment, but creation becoming a curious pursuit, they have come to understand certain hidden secrets that are there in this creation. And therefore, in the past, our Vedic masters, who are known as rishis, the very word rishi means one who sees. Rishyate, one who sees. We also see, but we live with the two eyes. But they see with a very keen intellect. Every scientist is a seer. They don't look at merely what is presented in front of them. They observe, analyze, and go deeper into it to find out what it could be. So the seers of the past, rishis, they went on inquiring, investigating about the secrets of the creation. This inquiry or investigation in Sanskrit known as Mimamsa. Ma in Sanskrit means to measure. Ma miyate, to measure. Mimamsa is investigation, inquiring in deeper into something. Therefore, Vedas are known as Purva Mimamsa. What began with inquiry. And when they are a seat of meditation or sitting in deep contemplation about knowing the nature of things, one thing which is distinctly different from the Eastern thinkers and Western thinkers are this. Number one, the difference is, first I'll tell you the common aspects. Both of them wondered about this world. Both of them are curious to know about the world. But the Eastern thinkers, they started their journey to go within, whereas the Western world started to go without. They went into the matter and its secrets, whereas the Eastern thinkers went into the mind and its secrets. For they have understood one thing, that who is this one who is wandering here? And what is this which wanders? Why am I wondering? Not what I am wondering about. So if I know the secret of my own being, me being more intelligent than a material thing, I would know much more than what matter is. So this kind of a different direction they went into. And therefore we find in the Western world the material aspects of the life has become abundantly more, while in the Eastern world it is a greater discovery of mind and its propensities. When they thus went into inquiring the nature of the mind or the nature of existence, etc., and they had concluded, if I know the nature of my existence as a curious thinker, I would understand the existence of the non-living material thing also. And when they had thus inquired further and went on into that pursuit of inquiry, they realized mind interprets reality in its own ways. It is the intervention of the mind that creates varieties of experiences. A situation by itself cannot give you positive or negative experience per se. It is how the mind interprets. It is how the mind includes knowledge, earlier experiences, its way of looking at things, its likes, its dislikes, its prejudices. So when they thus went to try to go beyond these interpretations of the mind, they have come to what is known as mantra. The very word mantra means manana trayate, which goes beyond the mind. Therefore, the first part of Vedas is about mantra. Wonderment about the creation. What is interpreted by the mind and what is actually is. So when we read the mantras, Vedic mantras, we don't understand a head or tail. I wonder what it is. We also wonder, but our wonder is different. We don't understand wonder. They understood and wondered. That's the difference. When you don't understand a person also, you wonder what that person is. When you understand the person, you wonder more, why is he like this? So mantras are discoveries of the rishis about the secrets of creation as interpreted by the mind. And this portion, mantra portion, is a very interesting portion of Vedas, in the sense that they talk about things which we can never even imagine. And they are not just a blabbering of the lotus eaters, as Max Muller observed before. It is a deeper understanding of something which are not available for a gross perception. As much as if I say, in a glass of water there are millions of germs, will you believe? Will you believe? When you are drinking a glass of water, understand one thing. What? There are millions of germs you are drinking. You say, what are you talking? It's after all water. Okay. Put it under the microscope and see. And you will see, and next time you will not take water at all. Because so many different things are there. The more you know, the more hesitation we will have. Once I was taking some group of people to Chardham Yatra, long time back, almost 18 years back. And in that group of 60-65 people who went with me, there are 20 of them were doctors, physicians. Except them, all out of the 60-63 people, only those 20 people fell sick. Because they know this is dirty and that is dirty, and this I can't drink and that I can't. Others were comfortably taking the journey. Now that happens. So that's why it is said that an internist is one who knows everything but does nothing. An internist knows everything but does nothing. A surgeon knows nothing but does something. Does everything, A psychiatrist is one who knows nothing, does nothing. A pathologist does everything and knows everything. So I do not want to, pull anybody's leg here. Idea is that the less you know, it's a blissful, ignorance is bliss. Now, if you take a water, and if I tell you all these things, will you drink? You don't. Why? Because you are afraid. What will it do? And so far it has not done anything to you. So it won't do anything. So here what we find, the mantra is not to dissuade people, it does not discourage you to live, but it tells you, this is there, you understand. You may believe, you may not believe, that is up to you. So when a priest or someone gives you a mantra and says, this will help you in quietening the mind, or it will help you to have blessings from the Lord or grace from the Lord, do this. How? Why? Have you proved? Show me the people who have got benefited out of that. If you go on asking this, he may give answers to you. But then it all depends upon how much faith you have in using that. Consistency is very important in all these practices. So mantras are the first part of the Vedas, which are about the wonderment about this creation and the secrets of it. Now, they are not satisfied just by the mere interpretation or the understanding of these secrets, but they want to utilize it for personal benefit. Therefore, they came up with methods of using the mantras in activities, invoking the grace of the Almighty, the power, hidden power. Just like military and other systems have discovered this cellular phone technology long time back, much before it came to our market. So science had developed much before it became technology. Technology today helps us to use that science or theory into practice. Therefore, the mantras were put into a practical use in rituals. They are called Brahmanas. So the Brahmana portion of the Vedas are about rituals which are meant for using the mantras for getting the grace and blessings and benefits from the hidden nature. So the mantras are used properly when they are used, when they are pronounced, they are uttered, they are accordingly employed in the rituals along with the various ingredients that are necessary to be offered into the fire, etc. It's a whole complete science by itself. That contains a large portion of the Vedas, mantra and Brahmana. And when they have thus developed this kind of thinking and practice over many years, thousands of years, there came a set of people. It always happens when a particular practice is going on for a long period of time, there will be some people who think differently. It's unavoidable. Human minds are built like that. That is called a revolution. A revolution not necessarily going against an existing system. It is about removing unwanted aspects of it. Is it not? Unwanted things to be removed and essential things to be kept. So unwanted aspects of the rituals are removed and the essential aspects are retained. In other words, instead of using the mantras for rituals, etc., and performing the rituals in an elaborate fashion with all the various ingredients, in the process, as it happens to any system, they forgot the original nature, original purpose of it. And rituals became very highly important for people, and they have taken so much of time and effort and in performing the rituals. And they have come up with the discipline of he can do, she can do, you cannot do, he cannot do, all those things. And only people who are born in this particular section can do the rituals, others cannot do. And you will find that because that's a development of thought. So there came a set of people who said later on, these are all not necessarily to be confined to certain people alone, rituals. Though no doubt any ritual you take up, there are certain disciplines to follow. You should do certain things, you should not do certain things. Let us say that when you are going to the, going from here to any other part of the country and then you are going to the airport and therefore security. And as soon as you reach the security section, then they say, nothing in your pocket, remove everything, remove your shoes, remove your anything you are keeping in your pockets, and then metals and this and then cell phone inclusive, and laptop should be out. What is it? It's a ritual. Is it not? For a purpose. They are doing it with an intention to make sure that everything is scanned properly. In the same way, any procedure has got do's and don'ts. You cannot avoid that. In the process, some people are very discouraged, some people have taken authority over it, and all those things happened. There came the set of people who said, instead of performing the rituals and gaining the blessings from the powerful presence, Almighty everywhere, is it possible that instead of using an activity, physical activity, can I gain the ability to think about the Almighty power only in the mind? there came Upasana. Upasana portion of the Vedas are about meditations upon the powers. Not necessarily rituals. Rituals are only a very meager part of Upasana. Mainly it is focus. Focus upon the power, chanting the mantras all right, but not focus is not on what you are doing physically, but how you are thinking about it. That is called the Upasana portion of the Vedas. So, mantra, the wonderment and then the secrets of the hidden nature of the world, understanding the interpretation by the mind, performance of rituals called Brahmanas, then came the Upasana. Now, again, further development. There came the next part of it. This Upasana portion is also known as Aranyakas. Aranyaka means, Aranya means forest. Aranyaka, that which is developed in the forest. Meaning in the solitude, in isolation, where a person, an individual not engages in rituals, but in his in contemplation, in isolation, in solitude, he is able to exclusively think about the power hidden behind the whole creation. A very minimum amount of ritual part of it. Aranyaka. So further development, these Aranyakas, those who have sat in deep contemplation, they came to know, slowly discovered, that after all these powers which I am talking about, the wonder of the nature, etc., all these things are right. But what is that which is the very converging point of all of them? What is that one because of which everything is possible? Yajñātvā sarvamidam vijñādam bhavati, knowing which everything will become known. What is that one thing which is expressing as many? What is that one power? Is it not even science is looking for that one single law because of which all laws are working? So they wanted to understand that one because of which everything is possible. So what is the substratum of the whole thing? And that substratum of the whole thing must be one within me also. Because in and through every one of us, there is only one which is operating as many. So this became a philosophical discussion. Highly intellectual, all right, but the discussion is unavoidable because as I said, development of thoughts, a revolution takes place. They wanted to know whether it is necessary for us to engage in worldly activities or to obtain the highest freedom. What we call it as a grace and blessings from the Almighty and the power, etc., which will make this worldly life comfortable and happy. But beyond that, what? Beyond this physical existence, what is there? Am I to just live like anybody, like a worm here and then die and disappear? Or there is a continuity? Beyond the death, is there an existence? You see in Kathopanishad also this discussion comes, Mundaka Upanishad has got. So Upanishads are nothing but these discussions that took place at a highly philosophical level or balance between the teacher and the taught. And the teacher is relatively more informed than the student and who has already thought about it, already discussed with the similar minded people and came to certain conclusions and declared it in through scriptures, not one day or today, many thousands of years of understanding and bringing into certain conclusions. And individually they not only understood those theories but have practiced also. Dotriyam Brahmanishta. This exactly is the point in the 4th chapter. Now, why I am giving this introduction is because karma sannyasa yoga, jnana karma sannyasa yoga. That is what the 4th chapter about. Bhagavan Krishna also said this. If you want to know that, you have to go to your teacher. Tadvidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. So Gita is essentially the philosophical discussion that took place in the deeper forests where the rishis have meditated and deliberated upon the higher philosophy. Therefore, it is called Uttara Mimamsa. The deliberation, inquiry about what is beyond. And that constitutes Upanishad. And Gita is essence, nothing but the essence of Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Duktam Gita Amrudam Mahat. Gita is the milk, if you consider, and cows are the Upanishads, and the essence of the cow is the milk. Similarly, Gita is therefore the essence of the Upanishads brought to a common man. You know, one may think by reading Gita we understand the philosophy. Should I have to go through the mantra and Brahmana and Aranyaka? Not necessary. But true rituals will offend them. What do you mean? Our tradition is all about rituals and mantras and upasanas, and how do you just reject it? It's not a question of rejection. It's a question of irrelevance. In the sense that if you have exclusively understood and then want to realize the highest truth, where your requirement at the worldly level are minimal, then yes. You cannot keep both the worldly requirements and desires and other things to be fulfilled. At the same time, I want to be philosophically highly thinking. Then you're actually misunderstanding your own needs. I want to enjoy looking at the cake and eat it also. That's not possible. Either you enjoy looking at it or you cut it and eat it. And some people are there who buy a new car and keep it in the garage, waxing it every day, never use it. You want to have the nice car, but once you use it, it will become old, right? No, I don't want it to be old, I just want to be as it is. Then you don't use it. You cannot enjoy the ride of it. You want to enjoy the ride, then every moment you go bump up and down, your heart will also go up and down. Only the Swamis enjoy that. Because we don't own the car. Now you see, the philosophical discussions are for those people who have advanced in their thinking and also have become mature enough to let go of all other things. That is the reason why here in the 4th chapter, Bhagavan Krishna very clearly, very carefully handles the subject, because his intention is not only to make Arjuna understand the highest goal of life, but at the same time, he should not stop doing what he has to do at the worldly level and get ready for it. Your son wants to become a doctor. Doesn't he have to go for the first grade onwards? So I want to go become a medical professional. I want to be a doctor, all right. But where do you start? Straight into the medical college. Huh? You have to go through the CAT, MCAT, or if you want to become a lawyer, then LSAT, engineering, so many different, even before that you have to prepare yourself. In the same way, our raw mind needs to be prepared, and therefore it is necessary for us to take up to certain amount of rituals and upasanas, become mature enough and renounce the unnecessary needs and engagements in this world. That is what Bhagavan Krishna very clearly says. In the chapter 4, we saw, Name karmani limpanti, name karma pale spruha, idimam yobijanadi karmavir nasabadyate. Evam nyatva kritam karma purvairavi mumukshubhihi, guru karma eva tasmatvam purvai purvataram kritam. He says, me namam karmani limpanti. I am not affected by actions. Krishna, as an avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu, is standing at the top of the ladder, trying to inspire Arjuna. This is the goal. What? Unaffected by action. Whatever comes to your life. See, karma is not what you do, what makes you do also. Why are you here? You come here, but that is an action. But why are you here? Swamiji, karma. See, don't feel bad about it. I'm not idea is not bad about it. You are not here. You are here because you brought your children, all right, and your wife brought you. Whatever it is, karma. You are here because of before here coming here, you have done a few things, right? All the people in this community are here. No, why you are here? Because you have an interest to learn. Hopefully, that's why you are here. And why you have the interest to learn? And if you go back, you look at it. There are certain things that happen in your life that your parents have done to you, or you have understood certain things, or you read somewhere, or you met with some people, whatever. So those things which you have done in the past have turned into this intention to come here. So that's what I say. Karma is not what you do, but what makes you do. So he says that no such pushing and pulling about the world touch me. Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale spruha. I do not have desire to get anything in particular out of my action. That means I have gone beyond the worldly needs and desires, and that is exactly where you find freedom. The more desires and demands your body, mind, everything has, the less freedom you will enjoy. Because one thing pulls here, one other thing pulls that side, and you are getting pulled here and there. Where is the question of then happiness there? Because everything is demanding your attention. Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale Iti mam yo vijanati. This way one who understands the highest truth, karma bihi, even though he engages in action, nasapadyate, he does not get bound. Not that he does not engage in the world. After all, when you are in this world, you have to do actions, all right? But what makes you captively imprisoned is, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. So the mind is demanding too many things, and therefore, neither there is a freedom in what you do, nor you have a freedom in your mind to settle down quietly. Therefore, evam jnatva kritam karma, in this way you know and then you do. Purvairavi mumukshubhihi. If this is how the men of the past have done, even though engaging in action, they became slowly freed from action. Kuru karma eva tasmatvam. Therefore, engage in action. Purvai purvataram kritam, the way of the people of the past did it. But at the same time, at the last part of the chapter 4, Krishna has said, Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana samchinna samshayam. He says that when you understand the highest knowledge and leave cutting asunder your all the doubts through knowledge. Atmavantam na karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya. No action will bind you thereafter. By renunciation of action through correct knowledge. So knowledge alone is an antidote to karma. Knowledge alone can make you understand the emptiness of desires, and thereby, when the desires are not there, actions will not be prompted in you. Starbucks coffee. Do you want it right now? Now, if I put it in your head, today especially for the first day, we are giving Starbucks coffee to everybody. and only limited available. You will be the first person to run there. So why? Because that desire has come, then you cannot stop but run. So a person who has understood the freedom is possible only by knowing my higher nature, thereby not succumbing to my lower demands, that knowledge alone can be an antidote to action, not anything else. By doing more actions, you will not become free from action. Swamiji, tomorrow onwards I am not smoking, therefore I smoke the maximum today. Hey, if you don't want to smoke tomorrow, why do you do today? Huh? If you decided that is dangerous to your health, let us say, and tomorrow onwards I want to be free of this addiction of smoking. So today I will have it. If you have understood it is dangerous to you, so why did you stop now? So that means it is only an idea, a superficial thinking, or for the sake of convincing somebody, or you are fooling yourself. Tomorrow maybe the day after it will start again. So knowledge, when you have understood and realized that evam jnatva, that's why it says yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana samchinna samshayam. No doubt should be there. Then atmavantam, one who has found himself by himself and abiding in himself, now nibadhanti dhananjaya, then he is not bound. Now, Arjuna had a question. You said, at one hand, do action, as the previous people have done, my ancestors have done, the way they have done, purvadam, etc. On the other hand, importance of knowledge through which renounce the action. Now, which one should I do right now? Should I walk the path of knowledge where I can through knowledge renounce action, or through action I renounce action? Meaning, through performing action desirelessly can I come to a renunciation of action, or by just knowledge? Doubt is valid or not? How can I have a doubt about the doubt itself? The doubt is, now let us read, then we will understand here. Atha panchamo dhyayah. Next page. Arjuna uvacha sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha shamsasi yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunischitam. Together. Arjuna uvacha sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha shamsasi yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunischitam. Hey Krishna, Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna is asking this question. Hey Krishna, karmanam sannyasam, renunciation of action, punaha karmanam yogam cha shamsasi. You are praising shamsasi, renunciation of action as well as performance of action, karma yoga and karma sannyas. Yoga means engagement, karmani yoga, karma yoga. Engaging in action on one hand, and renunciation of action on the other hand. Both of them you are praising. I'm getting confused now. To confuse the student is purposeful action of the Guru. Why? Because then only you think. If everything is given in a platter, I'm just fooling you completely. Because everything is given as easily to you, then where is the question of your intelligence? That's what most of the Indian mothers do to the children. No, you don't do anything. I will wash your clothes, I'll cook your food and this, and then just get up and even no, you don't need to wear clothes. I will put the clothes on your body also. And that fellow gets and then goes and then 12 years is 12, after 12th grade and the first day in the university, he doesn't even know where the washing machine is. And he brings the whole cloth every weekend. Mommy, you do it. And mommy, poor thing, cooks the food and packs it and everything and gives to him and do backload of thing. He goes, opens, it's not a date also. Breakfast, Sunday morning breakfast, Monday morning breakfast, Monday evening. And then not only that, reminder also goes. Did you eat your breakfast? Did you eat your... And then if you don't answer, the text comes. Breakfast, did you eat? That fellow afterwards is so totally pampered and gets married. The one who gets married to him gets totally... She is so unhappy and so agitated. Oh, your mother has pampered you this way. That fellow becomes totally useless. And expects exactly the same way my mother did you do it. Anyway, point is, the Guru necessarily puts words in such a way that the students should get bewildered. What is it? Exactly, Krishna smiles there. What is your question? On the one hand, you are asking me to do action. Kuru karma eva tasmatvam. Do your action. Then what you are saying? Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana samchinna samshayam. Atmamantam na karmani nibatnanti. With the knowledge, destroy action. Should I do or not do? This is the doubt I have. Karmanam sannyasam, karmanam yogam cha shamsasi. Punaha. You are praising both without even washing your mouth. Gurudev used to say, without even washing your mouth, same with the same tongue, you would say both things. Do and don't do. How? Either you say do sannyas, or just don't do anything. Or you engage in action. How do I do the same time? Both. Therefore he says, Yat Shreya, what is the best? Etayoho, between these two, Ekam, one. That one which is best for me in these two, Tad, that one, Me Bruhi, tell me. After you think better, Sunishchitam, Sunishchitam Bruhi, you better think before you tell me. And don't you go on confusing me like this. Most important part here, word here is Tad me Yashreya. What is most important, most beneficial to me? The teacher has to keep the student in mind when giving an advice. In spiritual world, the knowledge that will be imparted by the student, by the teacher, should be exclusively for the particular student. That's the difference between a teacher and a guru. A guru is a personal guide who keeps the student in mind and gives advice. Whereas a teacher, in general, says what is there. That is the difference between Google and a guru. Now you understand. You go to Google, he will give you whatever is there. But Guru cannot give that way. It's like going to a pharmacy and then taking a medicine over the counter, or going to a physician and asking what's suitable to me. There's a difference between over the counter medicine and prescribed prescription, is it not? Is it not? Prescription is what? The physician has understood what's your problem, what you can take, what you cannot take, what is your body's requirement, and what are the allergies that you have, and it's based upon all these things, he will say this is the correct thing for you. Because over the counter you go, whatever is available you can take, but after that next what happens nobody knows. Guru, the doctor is not responsible if you buy over the counter something and eat it. Many people say, Swamiji, I went to the Google, it says like this, what do? I didn't say that. You do go and ask the Google only there. Many people come and this is a very funny thing. You know, one guru whom I went, he said like this. What do you mean by that? You ask him. Why are you asking me? If he says it, he has to answer that. No, you're asking me about that. So, the point is that what is suitable to me, you tell me. Engaging in action or overcoming action through correct knowledge. Ishreya etayoregam tanme bruhi sunischitam. Please tell me conclusively, what is that which will give the highest good for me? Is it engagement in action or renunciation of action? Now understand, Krishna has to advise one thing to Arjuna. One of these two. Will he? You know Krishna, you won't. He says, I'll tell you one thing. I will give you both on the plate. I will put it both in front of you. Now you think where you fit. Because he's a universal teacher. He has to keep in mind Arjuna and as well as others who are like Arjuna. So that it is not only an advice to a person, but anybody and everybody who reads to also understand why I am saying this to you. It's not a secret teaching. If you belong to this category of thinking, then that is for you, like Arjuna. But that is not the answer. If you go to a shop, Verizon or AT&T or any of this cellular, they are mobile. There are so many varieties of various things are there. S6, S4, Edge, Node Edge, all so many. They will say, I want a cell phone. You look at you very funnily. Everything is cell phone only. But what is your need? You have eye problem? Yes, then buy the biggest note. Because otherwise you can't see a thing. You have to have a big. Do you text too much? This. With a stylus. Or you talk too much? Then this is it. You travel too much, and this is a smaller one for you because you cannot carry the bigger one. Do you text while driving? Then this is one. This is a Bluetooth available for that also. So it is because upon the requirement of that person. Similarly, at this point, Arjuna requires to act for the very fact that he thinks that by not fighting he will become free of action is a wrong thinking. By not doing an action, you will not be free. By not having the desire to act, you will be free. Now, by just acting, you will not renounce desires. So, knowledge is necessary. Now, you see, are you ready for that knowledge? Mind is not pure. Mind is agitated and extroverted. So, keeping Arjuna in mind, he has to give the answer, but he cautions that is not the answer. The answer is relevant to people who are like Arjuna. But he cannot say that is the answer, and if he does so, then he is going against the Upanishadic declarations. Sannyasat eva muktihi. Renunciation alone. Na karmana, na prajaya, dhanena, tyage naike, amritatvama Tyage naike, only by renunciation, amritatvama of the supreme immortality is gained. So that is the viewpoint of the Upanishad, and he cannot go against it. But at the same time, if he says that without understanding, Arjuna will say, that's what I expected. Let us get out of this place. And you are not ready for that. So therefore, Arjuna's answer to this question has to be very, very carefully revealed by Krishna, and therefore, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasa karma yogascha Nishreyasa karavubhau Tayostu karma sannyasat Karma yogo vishishyate Shri Bhagavan uvacha Sannyasa karma yogascha Nishreyasa karavubhau Tayostu karma sannyasat Karma yogo vishishyate. Next week. I have to keep it in a suspense, right? If I tell you, then you will not buy the book. You have to buy the book to know about what he said. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkhavat Bhavet Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Announcements.